The ayes are 51, the nays are 43, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
During the Ebola scare last year, one of the things we constantly heard about and hammered away at was the fact that America did not have a Surgeon General. Well, guess what? We have one now, the youngest Surgeon General ever. Oh, yes, and speaking about that Ebola issue, there's something else about that in 2014. The word exaggeration comes to mind right away. Let us go ahead and welcome in Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate to go ahead and bring us the House call and bring us up to speed on everything that's happening here. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to be here.
A young Surgeon General
Yes.
now. I saw one picture of him where he was kind of like standing like this. It's kind of like, I'm
Dun,
the
dun,
Surgeon
dun.
General. It's like, wait, first of all, just give us a little background.
Right. This guy has pretty rock-solid credentials. I mean, he's the son of a doctor. He's at Harvard Medical School. He's a physician at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. He's got kind of the credentials of a solid doctor. The question about him is he's actually been a pretty vocal political advocate too on issues like gun control. He defines gun violence as a public health problem.
Which is why it took him so long to get to this point, because the NRA was very heavily against him.
That's right. In fact, this vote is seen as a loss for the NRA because they've got a guy who clearly advocates gun control. So the question now with Dr. Murthy is whether or not he's going to set politics aside in this position and really, be an advocate for the people's health, or whether he'll continue to use this position as a bully pulpit for his issues.
Okay, so here's the first question that comes to mind. This is the 21st century. Do we really need a Surgeon General, and what does the Surgeon General do that we can't live without?
Well, the Surgeon General does not set policy. He's not even a critical advisor to the White House or the President. He really is just stand up and be an advocate for people's health. Now, in the past, there have been very strong public advocates for public health, people like C. Everett Koop.
Everett Koop, yep.
The individuals in the 60s that brought tobacco to light as a major public health problem. So they can use this position to really focus on issues and raise the visibility of issues, but that's an open question. As we saw with Ebola, there were a handful of people that kind of stepped up and took over, from the head of infectious diseases, CDC. You can debate whether or not they did a good job, but there were folks, HHS Secretary, who theoretically have more power and more ability to have an influence.
That's just it. We talked about this several months ago, too. Everybody's screaming, where's the Surgeon General? The Surgeon General, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would not really have been able to do anything different than what was done by the people who are in control. It could have been done better, as you said, but this person, basically powerless.
It's true. Powerless, can stand up and talk a lot and raise focus, raise issues, and put attention on things like Ebola or HIV or heart disease, but in terms of power, and not really.
I just want to bring C. Everett Koop back because he always had his tassels on his shoulders. He came out in the whole military garb.
He was somebody to look at, true.
He was, and he basically made a lot of points, but I don't know if we need it anymore. That will be debated.
Yes.
This is not debated according to PolitiFact. The 2014 lie of the year, they say, is the exaggeration about Ebola. They blame the media, they blame the politicians, they blame everybody, saying that it was totally exaggerated and totally off base. Nothing is ever total in this life.
Well, look, my take on this is that we were right in the media and public health officials to pay attention to Ebola. I would ask the folks at PolitiFact to talk to any one of the members of the families of the 6,400 people who have died from Ebola in West Africa, whether they think that that's an exaggeration or not. I mean, that's really something to be considered. Because there were only a couple cases here doesn't mean that we shouldn't have focused attention on it. Now, one thing you really can't measure with public health is prevention. It's possible that all that attention is one reason why there were so few cases and why the U.S. was, after a while, really energized. The healthcare workers really took hold of the situation in hospitals. And if you look at what Time Magazine did, they named their Persons of the Year Ebola healthcare workers.
Well, let's not be Pollyanna here, because let's be very honest. There were some things that were said that were completely false, completely hyperbolic. Some people went way over the edge here. As a matter of fact, PolitiFact even looks at Senator Rand Paul, who we had on the show earlier today, describing Ebola as incredibly contagious, very transmissible, and easy to catch.
Right.
They rated that mostly false.
And that is mostly false. That's true. I mean, George Will said some very similar things. Was looking at the notes today, and there were allegations that Ebola was actually created in a lab as a way to, target through bioterrorism. So there were some wild and crazy ideas out there, and some people got it wrong, but that doesn't mean that Ebola did not pose a significant risk and that we shouldn't have been focusing on it.
I am confident that here on this show we did it right. We did not
we
did not raise a lot of screaming flags. We basically told everybody just know what's going on and listen to all the sides.
And put it in context. The flu is a bigger concern in the U.S. and do what you can to prevent the flu. And there are other things, antibiotic-resistant disease, you need to pay attention to. We were very clear on the context there too, I believe.
All right, let's be clear on this too. There are doctor shortages in this country, and they are getting worse no matter what the administration says, no matter what the Pollyannas, I'll use that word again, say. We got a problem here.
We do. There already is a doctor shortage, and there's a new survey out by the Physicians Foundation that finds that 81% of doctors are now describing themselves as overextended or at full capacity. Almost half say that they either will retire or have to cut back on patients, and something like 1 in 5 Americans live in a region where there is already a doctor shortage. One big reason is that healthcare reform has added the number of people who are on the rolls and getting insurance and showing up in doctors' offices by about 7 million last year. We're already dealing with not enough doctors meeting the demands that exist out there. That is going to continue to grow.
You know what I'm going to bring into this too, and this is a discussion for another day, but we'll have to think about this. There's a shortage of doctors in this country. There's also not a lot of great doctors in this country anymore, because I talk to a lot of people. They tell me about their personal care physicians and the people they go to. They say they're rotten doctors. They're not as good as people are used to, the medical care.
Well, in any industry, you're going to find the good and the bad.
You will.
There's no question about that. But I think the truth is, I'm not making excuses for doctors, but they're spending more time with paperwork. They're seeing more patients, and they have less time with them. So you're not going to get that kind of Marcus Welby care where you have a relationship with your doctor. In generations past, things really were better. You knew your doctor, he knew you, he knew your family or she, and so we're in a better position to counsel you and take care of your health. That's no longer the case. We're becoming more of an assembly line system with healthcare, and that's going to continue. The projection from the the Association of American Medical Colleges is that there will be a shortage of at least 66,000 doctors in this country in just the next decade. So it's going to get more difficult for patients.
Can you do sugar, no salt in 30 seconds?
I can. Sugar's a bigger problem than salt when it comes to blood pressure. And the reason is that we've been sold this idea that low salt is the way to keep your blood pressure down, but in fact it only has a small impact on blood pressure. But sugar, high sugar foods, processed foods, shoot it through the roof. Your death rate for early death is 3 times if you're eating more than 25% of your calories with sugary foods.
You have obviously been spending time here on the floor sometime, because we got people out here who eat a lot of junk food and they never read what's on the back of the containers.
And that's why blood pressure is high everywhere in this building.
There you go. Take care of yourself. Nick, always a pleasure to see you again. Thanks
My
so much
pleasure.
for joining us. Stick around, because we're back over here as MidPoint continues.